Alright, okay, good evening everyone. Okay, we'll get started for today's session over here. Right, so as usual, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look into the markets, right? An overview of what are some of the events to take note of. And then after that, I'll jump into the technical analysis to walk you through some of the outlook, some of the opportunities for the week. And then from there on, we'll have a quick Q&A as well. Okay, so we'll see if you guys have any questions. We'll address those questions along the way. Right, and with that, let's get started by looking at what we have this week. Okay, so this week over here, Tuesday, we do have some Canadian CPI data coming in at 8:30 evening. That will be crucial, especially in terms of the CPI year-on-year data. That would also give us some clue as to whether the recent Bank of Canada, they have stalled their interest rate. Okay, so if the interest, in terms of inflation, doesn't really come down, as what we've expected over here, okay, then that may be a surprise part for Bank of Canada as well, and we may see the Canadian strengthen. Okay, and of course, alternatively, is if the CPI come in line with expectation or even lower in that, then there's no pressure for the Bank of Canada to even touch the interest rate anymore, and for that reason, the Canadian may continue to weaken. Okay, then on Wednesday we have the CPI coming in from the UK side. Okay, so in terms of inflation, UK is still one of the highest. You can see over here is still like 9.8, whereas a lot of our other major countries have already seen inflation fallen quite significantly. So with that, I think the pound, if you've been trading it, right, the pound has been quite resilient in comparison to some of the other currencies. And that is also reflected from the fundamental point of view, because with such a high inflation, 9.8, the Bank of England is unlikely going to be cutting rates anytime soon, as compared to maybe, look at Bank of Canada, look at the Feds, we're talking potentially the last hike, right? So do keep an eye on that. Unless the CPI coming in on Wednesday is going to be dropping like significantly towards the lower bottom of 9%. If not, then relative terms, the pound may continue to be resilient. The pound might see strength as compared to some of the other currencies, right? Other than that, on Friday, we do have some Euro services, PMIs, and things like that coming in. And then, of course, in terms of the US, we have the Flash Services PMI, and then the UK also. I don't think these are going to be like super crucial. But for pound, I think pound services PMI may have some impact if we can get a huge deviation. But again, those are not the tier 1 data right now. Okay, so they may serve an impact, but I don't think that's the most crucial aspect, right? So I think majority of the data is going to be more important is on Tuesday and Wednesday, right? CPI inflation related. Okay, so that's a quick one on that. So let's jump into the technical analysis portion and share with you a little bit. Okay, so I always look at the dollar index. So this is what we're looking at right now, DXY on a 4-hour time frame. Last week we kind of talked about how the dollar may continue to weaken and then come back and retest the previous bottom at 100.8. So last Friday we kind of tagged it very nicely, and we kind of seeing a little bit of a V shape right now. Okay. So what we can see over here potentially is a 5-wave structure has been completed. Okay, the recent bounce from last week until today seems to be quite impulsive, right? So this kind of seems like a V shape. So in the near term, if you can get a decent corrective structure here, maybe giving it another 2 to 3 days. So the earliest is probably going to be like Wednesday or Thursday. If you can see that, then we can expect at least one more push, perhaps back towards 103. And this would be a short-term buy potential for the dollar. Now, if you ask me long term, when I define long term here, we're talking about towards the end of the year. My view is still the same. The Fed would likely start talking about cutting rates soon, and we are looking at longer term dollar weakness, right? So any buy trade on dollar is considered near term, is considered short term. Okay, it's still tradable. But of course, you just want to be more aggressive in taking profits if you have any buy trade on the dollar, right? So this week here, the theme for dollar is if you get a corrective structure, we're going to look for a buy. Okay, and potential target is back to 103.05. So we'll wait for that. As I mentioned earlier, earliest setup that might come to you is somewhere around Wednesday and Thursday. Okay. Now, if you flip that over to Euro, kind of inverse of things, right? So Euro doesn't really have a very clear 5-wave structure, but just based on what we observed recently, we kind of have a V shape, right? So this kind of established the recent high around 1.1075, and if I look at this right now, the clearest pattern structure that I can see is a WXY. Okay, of course, internally here is a WXY as well. And if that's going to be the case, then of course this will be a near-term high, and we can expect at least a 3-wave push. Okay, now whether the price is going to come back and retest this low, it may not, because we do definitely have a couple of like other lows here that you can see. Okay, but nonetheless, if we can get a decent corrective move here, again, give it to the 3 days, then we can get a sell, right? So if the dollar is going to do a correction and continue to push higher for short term, then there's a good chance euro dollar is going to do a correction, and then we're going to see another sell opportunity. Okay, so keep an eye on that. Again, if you can get correction by Wednesday or Thursday, then this week will be the sell trade, at least for the short term, for euro dollar. Okay, yeah. GBP USD. Okay, so pound dollar over here. There are mainly 2 ways in which we can look at this chart. Now, this is my primary forecast, which I don't think this is 3 and 5. I don't think that the top has ended yet. The reason is because if this is going to be wave 1 and 2, and this is just going to be the end of wave 3, 4, and 5, from Elliott Wave guidelines, there isn't much of an alternation between 4 and 2. And wave 5 seems a little bit short in comparison to the entire thing, right? So for that reason over here, my primary forecast is then we're still within wave 4, and wave 4 here may be developing into either regular flat or even an expanding flat, and we can expect one more pushback, right? If that's the case, then we have a very nice kind of like wave 2 is short, wave 4 is long, okay, and wave 5 would then ideally be a little bit more comparison in terms of like 1 and 3, right? So that's why my primary view right now is that wave 4 is still potentially developing, and the idea here is if we can get a cross structure coming back towards like 1.2340, right? It might break a little bit, because if it's expanding, it might go a little bit off, but the idea is if you can get a cross structure here again in the next 2 days or so, we can actually get a buy trade on pound dollar. Okay, and of course, if I go back to the Forex Factory, you can see Wednesday we do have CPI, right? So that may be one of the potential catalysts that may push the pound dollar higher from there. Okay, so do keep an eye. I think we might have an opportunity, depending on how price develop over here, for a setup to look in terms of the buy. Okay, so kind of opposite to the euro, because euro here this week, if we do a consolidation, we'll be looking for a sell, and then pound dollar here, if we do a crawl, we'll be looking for a buy. Okay, so kind of different direction. Some of you who are more kind of like focusing on the correlation aspect of the market, maybe a bit of counterintuitive. Okay, but for me here, I always say we look at the chart as it is, we analyze the chart as it is, and then we trade it as it is, right? So to me, I don't take correlation into a decision for my trade, but I'll just simply use correlation as part of risk management. Okay, so in this case here, if I'm looking for a potential sell in euro and potential buy in pound, I'm perfectly fine with that. Okay, and then we have the euro. We have the Aussie dollar. Now, Aussie dollar, I'm a little bit on the neutral side of things, because there are a couple of ways in which we can look at this. Okay, now what you see over here that I've done in the analysis is that this will be a leading diagonal wave 1. This is wave 2, and then from here we may expect more upside to do 3 and 5, or 3, 4, 5, right? So if that's the case, then we of course would expect more upside as long as the price remains above this low, 6620. But we have another alternative here as well, where this can be a double top. Okay, so this is not a 1 and 2. Then what can happen over here is W, X, and then this is Y, and then we can get a bigger move back down, right? So obviously we won't know like exactly which is going to happen, okay, but this drop here looks quite impulsive, right? A V. So I'm not too aggressive in buying this up yet, okay, because of that various reasons, right? We have double top, we have this impulsive drop. So if I'm bullish on this, I want to at least see some kind of a rejection from the 50 and 618. Okay, if you can get that, then of course there's a higher possibility this may go up. But I'm still going to be very cautious, because if this does a correction here, we may see more downside from there, right? And then this would still be a bigger corrective, and the market may retest the previous bottom. So Aussie dollar is not so straightforward. It's a little bit more complex. Okay, you definitely need to pay a bit more attention and put in a bit more effort to monitor it if you're interested in trading this. Okay. And then on dollar Canadian, so dollar Canadian, last week we kind of share a little bit about this corrective structure. We kind of get a break, very nice. So right now this may have completed wave 5 or may not. Okay, but either case, I don't think you want to be selling it anymore if you don't have any sell position. Okay, but if you kind of manage to get it a sell, from last week, ideally you would have managed a little bit of a trade. You may have take some partial profits along the way. Whatever it is, I would suggest right now, manage your sell if you have any. Okay, at least the minimum you can do is to shift your stops to break even, and then if you're targeting this, then you can see if you can get another low. Okay, now understand that price doesn't need to come back all the way to that low, right? Because if we're going to continue see a pushback up here, this may be the end of a 1 2 3 4 5, and we may see a 3-wave pushback, and coming back to this wave 4 high at 1.3550. Okay, so this one here, if from now on, in the next 1 or 2 days, we see a corrective pattern like that, then we'll be opening up the possibility we might be able to get this short-term upside. Okay, so this one here, is not going to be as clear as the euro and the pound in terms of the correction, simply because this little impulse push is not that obvious, right? Because what can turn into is that this can do a little bit of a correction. It can kind of go up, but if this entire piece looks very corrective in nature, then this may still do a little bit back to retest the previous low. Okay, so right now I'm not like very bullish on that, but definitely if you don't have any sell, then I wouldn't suggest to be selling it, because the downside may not be very attractive at this moment. Right, so that's a quick update on the Euro Canadian side of things. And then we have the dollar yen. Okay, so dollar yen, last week we did talk a little bit about how this can turn into a bigger 3-wave structure. And we did cover a bit in terms of this pullback, and I say that okay, if price can reject off this 50, we can expect more upside. So right now what we're seeing here is a very nice little move. There's a good possibility the market will continue higher, coming back to this zone, and that's where we're going to be more interested in the sell. Okay, so again, if you don't have any buy trade, don't be buying this up, because again, the upside potential may be limited. But what I'll be observing is if you can get a crawl. Okay, in fact, we have a very nice little crawl in the past. Okay, so over here you can see, right, that's what we meant by crawl. If you can get this move here to develop here, then that would be perfect, right? Because you can see after a crawl, what we get a drop. After a crawl, this is what we expect, right? But this time around, if this is going to drop, we don't expect this to drop just that shallow, right? We don't expect it to just come back here. We expect it to break through. Okay, because from pattern perspective, this would be a 1 move, this would be a 3-wave move, which is a correction, and we have a lot of confluence over there. This drop may potentially come back and retest this recent bottom, okay, about 129.60. So the downside is definitely very attractive. Okay, so this trade setup may come to you, I would say maybe closer towards Wednesday or Thursday or even Friday, because if we want to see this as a crawl, it needs to go slow, right? So you need to just be patient. It's not going to be tomorrow, unless we see a V, then that's a different pattern itself. But if we are anticipating a crawl, give it time. So that's going to take maybe another 2 to 3 days. Okay. Yeah, so that's on the dollar yen. Okay, potential setup here that we may have closer towards the end of the week. And then we have gold. Okay, so gold may have completed the 5-wave move. So you can see here 1 2 3 4 is a triangle, and then 5th wave up. We have a very nice little rejection last Friday. So this kind of opens up the possibility that we may see a three-wave move down, right? So if you can put that in, that will be a potential ABC, right? And again, don't sell it here, but the idea is if you can get a decent corrective structure, give it maybe another day or two. If we get that, then we can get a sell trade, right? Back towards like 1950, which is where wave 4 is, and then that would be potentially another move back up. Okay. If you're a classical kind of like chart pattern trader, you will be probably observing this as a potential head and shoulder pattern as well, right? And if this kind of pull back very nicely, then of course that will be very, very ideal as a head and shoulder. What you do is you trade the break of the neckline, then you can estimate that it's roughly around there too. Okay, so gold this week, definitely, if this is going to do a correction, definitely an opportunity for the short term to the downside. Yeah. Fundamentally, long-term perspective on gold, I'm actually bullish on it, right? But short-term, we can still definitely trade the internals of it. We can still look for a sell. Okay, so that's on gold. Crude oil, for those of you who are interested in that, I think we are still looking at wave 5. I don't think this is the end of it. Again, why? Because if this is 3, this is 5. It's a bit awkward, right? I mean, it's not that it's impossible, but it's a bit awkward. Because you can see wave 2 is quite short, so wave 4 is shallow, right? So this is what we call the principle of alteration, okay? This comes deep, this comes shallow, right? So ideally, most of the time we get that. But wave 5 here, if that's going to end, is a little bit short in comparison to 1 and 3. Okay. So what I'm expecting over here is that whatever it's doing here, maybe just a 1, 2, and then maybe 3, 4, 5, to complete the 5th wave up, and then we will see a bigger correction. So at least for now, crude oil, if you're into trading this, you may have even a setup building up, by the end of today, where you can see this small little impulse correction, right? So this one, maybe it's a little bit on the lower time frame, like H1. Okay. So you can see, right, very, very nice little impulse. So this is a corrective structure. If you can get a break above that, that is a valid buy trade. Okay, and target for crude oil right now is somewhere around $89.90. Okay, so that's on the one. S&P, we're expecting a little bit of a pullback. Okay, I don't think, okay, my personal take over here on S&P is that we'll probably see the bottom, likely we've seen the bottom, right? So what this means is that any decent pullback correction can actually be seen as a buy opportunity. Okay. Okay, yeah. So what this means over here is that potentially this is very corrective in nature. So my projection here seems to be looking at an expanding flat of a wave 4 from this low here. So kind of like a leading diagonal, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4. Ideally, from a rule perspective, it shouldn't tag this, right? And then this should take off. Okay. If it tags it, can it still be a valid pattern for a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Technically, yes, if this is developing into a bigger leading diagonal, right? But I'm not too strict with all this labeling, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm more of a pattern trader, with Elliott Wave label as a guideline, right? So to me, as long as this move down is corrective, we kind of see a little bit of a rejection or lack of momentum to the downside, definitely still looking for a buy. Okay, so that's my view on S&P. So this week here, it's more or less a wait and just see how it goes week, right? I'm not interested in selling this. Okay, I'm more interested in just waiting for it to develop and see if I can get a buy. But for this to develop correctively, it's probably going to be until end of the week, right? So I don't think we're going to have any trade on S&P this week. Okay. And then Bitcoin. So Bitcoin broke off that 30,000 level last week. The news started reporting a lot about it, and then this time around we're looking at a pullback. So it kind of break below back that 30,000, and right now if you can kind of get a little bit of a support around 15,618, we can still see one more push up, right? And of course, this may develop into a diagonal here as well. So this buy may not be a super long-term buy, right? It may just be a short-term buy and then wait for a bigger pullback before the next buy trade, right? And we may even consider selling that if you're into like shorter-term trading in terms of crypto. So this week here, do keep an eye on how the market is going to react around at 15,618. Of course, we do have a little bit of a structure around there as well. So as long as price is able to maintain above 26520, and then any decent bounce here will be a short-term buyback up. Okay, so that's on BTC, right? So yeah, those are some of the major things to cover. I think this week, quite a bit of opportunities that we can look into. Okay, but of course, I always say this: the market is always evolving. What we share today may change quite quickly, if the market actually react differently as we have anticipated. All right. So that's the part of it. Okay. So good. Yeah. So with that, let's just very quickly see if you guys have some questions coming in, right? So I see over here one of you, Emmanuel, mentioned that you have placed a sell limit, for dollar yen. Yeah, right. I mean, this is definitely a trade that I'm quite confident in. Okay, but having said that, it doesn't mean that you risk everything, right? Because this can still go and break that high. But the idea here is this setup here has a high probability it will probably come back down. Okay, so that's the idea of it. Okay, good. So I see some of you are asking a little bit about other pairs here, so we're gonna look very quickly into it. Okay, CHF, JPY, if you ask me, this is definitely not something to look into right now. We have a divergence, okay? I mean, this is definitely not a buy, but we don't have a sell setup either, right? Because this can just keep doing like that. My suggestion here is don't buy it, but wait for a fast drop, a correction, then only you start consider selling. And again, for anything of this kind of time frame to develop, it takes time. So I don't think something would happen for you this week, right? So in fact, that means that you probably won't get any sell trade setup or any trade setup within the week. Okay. Euro Australia, to me, I'm more inclined to sell this instead of like buying. The reason is because on the higher time frame, we kind of get a quite obvious lack of momentum. I mean, from the perspective here, we have 1, 2, again, not the cleanest of all, but we kind of can see 5 wave up, and then internally here as well. Okay, and of course, if you pull in your RSI momentum, we kind of get a very clear divergence, right? And this divergence is happening even on the daily perspective, wave 3 and wave 5. So I'm not interested in the buy, and I'm just more interested in the sell. And we can see even if this drops down here, okay, which we have a little bit of confluence, that is quite nice, right? In terms of how much you can drop, right, from 6.3 to 5.8. That's a good like 500 bits. Okay, it's not small. And of course, we have that possibility this may come back and retest this low. Okay, and then that will open up towards like 1.52, right? So from 6.3 to 5.2, that's like 1,000 pips, right? So I'm more inclined in looking at that, right? So for me, if you ask me, Euro odd, what's my view? I would say focus on the sell. Okay, focus on sell. In fact, I did sell it at the break here last week. So a little bit of a drawdown. The market is still reacting. Nothing of a significance yet. But of course, this week, ideally, you want to see the momentum starts going lower. Okay. So that's on Euro odd. Question follow up on dollar yen. Is it ideal to leave the 100% sell limit or wait for a crawl pattern? Each of it has its own pros and cons, right? So you need to then decide how aggressive you are. I mean, if you ask my personal take here, I think for dollar yen, if you set a sell limit here or even a sell limit at 123, I would say that that's definitely a high confidence trade. Okay. Of course, if you would like to just wait for a little bit more confirmation, then wait for the crawl. yeah, but I would say, in terms of like the overall perspective of this trade here, setting a sell limit around the zone would be good. Okay, doesn't mean it's gonna be like working out perfectly, but that's a risk worth taking. Okay. Okay, question here. What does the volatility index mean? It's just basically measuring volatility of the S&P options market, right? So VIX is basically just measuring volatility of S&P. Okay. Generally, if WIX goes up, it means that we're in a risk-off environment. If WIX come down, then we're in a risk-on environment, right? Risk-off basically means we are not interested in taking high risk. Okay, and risk on means we're more willing to take a higher risk. Okay, so that's the idea of it. Okay, yeah, so good. Yeah, okay, I hope today's sharing is good. Okay. So Monday session, we tend to, I think those of you who have been joining for some time, we just keep it short. Okay, we just go straight to the point, look at the market, highlight some of the opportunities, and be concise about it, right? Okay, yeah. So I'll do a quick closing note over here. Okay, because some of you are watching it from different channels, right? I mean, right now we're concurrently doing it on a couple of platforms. So this session over here every Monday is actually sponsored by Everything Trading, okay, and they're partnering with this broker called Zenfinix, and we are currently also running some offline physical events together. Okay, and one of the upcoming events, just to very quickly share with you, is going to be happening on the 27th of April. The venue, okay, is going to be based in Malaysia, KL, okay, because I think some of you are not from Malaysia tuning in, okay. And the timing is going to be at 7 p.m. It's going to be in the evening, and the venue again is at Amardar Hotel. Okay, so this is gonna be an event that we're gonna be delivering and sharing in Mandarin, in Chinese. Okay, and we're gonna be talking a little bit about EA tradings, robot trading, copy trading. We're gonna introduce these concepts, cover it a little bit, so that if you're interested in all this, sort of like algo trading, EA trading, copy trading, at least you know the risk involved, at least you know what are some of the things to take note of before you embark on it, right? So that's the workshop event that we're going to be having on the 27th of April. Okay, so if you're interested in this, you need to RSVP. Okay, so if you're watching it on our Zoom channel right now, they will post up a link where you can click onto it and then go over to the WhatsApp, okay, which is the direct WhatsApp link to Everything Trading team, and then you can just RSVP and express your interest in joining with the team. Okay, if you're watching now not on Zoom, okay, on YouTube, then what happens over here is that you can go over to the video description below in this video, find the link through WhatsApp, right, and then you click onto it, as it's the same, right? It will lead you over to WhatsApp and then just RSVP with the team over there. Okay, Richmond asks, will this be at Penang? Probably not in April and May, right? Because April and May right now we're focusing in KL. Maybe in June, we'll be doing one maybe back in Penang. Okay, so nothing is confirmed yet, right? But we'll see, right? And of course, we'll update you if we're gonna have an event in Penang as well. Okay, so that's the event, right? That's upcoming for April. Okay, so those of you interested, click on the link, WhatsApp, and RSVP. Okay. Last question I see over here, very quick one, is from William, right? William asking like Euro Yen. Is it a crawl pattern? Yes. Okay, so this is actually a crawl pattern. So you can see over here, right? So this move up, we have a divergence, so that's a crawl, right? So great. Yeah, if you're looking at Euro Yen, then don't buy. Instead, look for potential sell because this may be reversing soon. Cool. Okay, yeah, so I think overall that's all. Okay, I'm seeing some questions coming in as well. Jonathan asked, is this gonna be based in Malaysia? Yes, right? um, good. Okay, yeah, so I hope today's session is good, giving you some ideas, some opportunities to keep an eye on for the week. Okay, so we're running this regularly every Monday, same timing. Okay, so if you feel that this is something that may benefit and help you to prepare for the week ahead, do tune in and join us regularly. Okay, yeah, so that's all for me. All the best for your trading this week, and we'll see you guys again either next week. Okay, online over here, or if you're in Malaysia, KL, PJ, feel free to join us for the upcoming event as well. Okay, good. So that's all. See you guys. Bye bye.